In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about why you shouldn't run from cliches when it comes to painting things that have been painted a million times, and why cliches can actually be a wonderful jumping off point to learn more about ourselves as artists and to plug into history. I see a lot of newer painters or more early career painters be really scared of a cliche. And just to explain what is a cliche, what is it with specifically in regards to painting? Well, we know cliches in writing, right? It was a dark and stormy night, once upon a time, all is fair in love and war, sort of those corny, overused phrases. And I'm sure if you've taken like a high school composition or writing class, you have heard someone say explicitly, stay away from cliches. And I get it. But as someone who is very self-proclaimed kind of a cheesy, sentimental person myself, I have had my own battles with being drawn towards things that are very much a cliche. And as someone who I feel like has worked my way to the other side of it, I wanted to share some of that insight with you as I painted a cliche, which is a painting of the Southwest. In fine art painting specifically, cliches would be a bowl of fruit, a flower in a vase, a Southwest painting, a beach painting, right? It's things that have been done a million times. And I will tell you one anecdote about cliches. I can remember struggling with writing in cliches and having one that would have just perfectly fit into what I was saying, but it's a cliche. And my partner, who is a writer by trade, told me sometimes cliches are cliches for a reason because they are sentimental and they express exactly what we're feeling. And it hit a light bulb moment for me in my head where all of a sudden I realized that a cliche is only a pitfall if you do it unknowingly. But the more you learn about cliches and tropes and traditions and you can engage with them intentionally, actually, the more you open yourself up to as an artist. So in today's video, I'm going to make 4 points as to why you shouldn't be afraid of cliches and actually how you can use cliches within painting to find out more about yourself and your connection to humanity and the tradition of painting in whole. Let's start with the obvious. Cliches are cliches because they're beautiful, universal, and evocative. The Southwest, for example, is one of the most painted regions in America because it's visually unique. Unlike other landscapes dominated by greens and trees, the Southwest is sculptural, almost architectural, with its rocky expanses and wide open skies. And those colors, the pinks, purples, yellow ochres, are often obscured by greener landscapes. That is to say that when you paint something green, those colors are there, but they're often dominated by the green hues. It's a painter's dream, offering a palette in a form that you wouldn't find anywhere else. And I think it's okay to embrace that beauty. There's no shame in painting something beautiful because it moves you, even if it's been done a million times before. Point number 2, cliches connect us to history and tradition. As artists, we often strive for originality and uniqueness, but the truth is no one works in a vacuum. When I paint something like a Southwest landscape, I'm tapping into a long lineage of artists who've done the same exact thing, from Georgia O'Keeffe to Edgar Payne. It connects me to a tradition that spans centuries, from the Barbizon painters of France responding to the light in the forest outside of Paris, to plein air painters in the American West. There's something humbling and grounding being part of history. In a world where novelty, attention-grabbing gimmicks are everywhere, it feels good to create something that's part of a larger conversation. One that existed before me and will continue long after I'm gone. The way I sort of compare this to whenever you stand in front of the ocean and you feel really small. As painters, there's so much pressure in our current landscape with social media to come up with something brand new and to really stand out and be novel. And obviously those things can be great, but I find that when that's all you're aiming for, you lose a lot of artistry. And by leaning into the tradition that has led painters to paint, cliches, things that have been done a million times, you sort of free yourself up to explore other things. So I always encourage leaning into history, and in particular, I would encourage you, if this is speaking to you, to lean into the history of the cliche you're painting. Look at other people who paint beaches and flowers and still life and study the history in regards to that cliche. The third point, cliches are an opportunity to focus on style. Here's the thing about painting something that's been done a million times. The subject is no longer the point. Everyone knows what white sands looks like. There's countless photos and paintings of it, so the focus shifts. Instead of reinventing the idea, I get to focus on how I paint it. The mark making, the paint application, the colors I choose, those become the star of the show. It's almost like playing with abstraction while still painting something representational, which is my absolute favorite game to play as a painter. The subject fades into the background and the technique takes center stage. That's freeing, and it's one of the reasons that I think painting cliches can actually push you as an artist. So one thing that my painting professor in college introduced to us was the idea that as painters, we're painting two things. One hand, we are painting a picture, right? The idea is that I show this finished painting to someone and then they can look at it and go, oh, those are clouds in a desert, maybe that's white sands. They sort of know what they're looking at. That often involves the realism aspect of painting. But there's also the mark making, and that's the way you apply paint, the color, the composition, all of the other sort of formal aspects to painting. And I feel like when you've painted something that's been painted a million times, you free yourself up to really dive deep into those things. If you're just trying to convey a picture, it can feel really flat, and especially in a world where digital art and AI art can generate an image really quickly and like without very much effort, I find that there's something very human about indulging in the aspects of painting that really can't be replicated by AI, and that is the mark making. Reason number 4, cliches help us reclaim what we often overlook. I grew up in the Ozarks, and it's a region that is, while objectively beautiful, full of rolling hills, it's often overlooked or even sometimes dismissed as a hillbilly or backwards flyover part of this country. As a kid, I didn't value it. I wanted to distance myself from those stereotypes, but as I've grown as an artist, I found myself reclaiming those landscapes and appreciating their beauties in ways that I couldn't have before. That's why I've always been drawn to the Southwest. There's a romance to it, a long tradition of artists making pilgrimage to paint the light and color there. And for me, embracing that trope isn't about copying, rather it's about honoring something that I've always loved. It's about saying, yes, this thing has been done before, but I'm still gonna do it because it matters to me. And the reason I bring this up is because when I was a kid, I enjoyed painters. I didn't really start painting earnestly until college, but I remember learning about Georgia O'Keeffe and thinking of being a quintessential painter meant going to the Southwest and painting. And obviously I found a lot of value in looking at the things that I didn't think were very painterly and bringing those to life. A big part of my painting practice is painting things that are sort of considered low class and lowbrow and commonplace or mundane and overlooked, and I really value that. But there's also been something very grounding about taking a pilgrimage to a place that is sort of one of the more cliche tropes within painting and really throwing myself into that kind of artwork. And my last point, cliches remind us of the bigger picture. In a world that moves fast, where content is lucky to hold our attention for a week, painting is something that is timeless and feels like an act of resistance. There's a quiet power in saying, I'm going to spend hours or days or gosh, even weeks at this point on things that aren't trendy or novel, but the value exists simply in the act of picking up the tradition of painting. Painting landscapes, especially iconic ones, remind me that I am part of something bigger than myself. It feels like contributing my own imprint on the tradition of Southwest painting. One of my favorite sort of ways of looking at our contribution as humans, we can have a lot of pressure, especially as young people, to make an impact on the world and do something big and splashy. But I forget where I heard it, but there was a saying where it's like, in the book of life, you can add one sentence. And there's something I think really special about just putting your name into the hat with all the other people who've painted the Southwest, or any other cliche for that matter, and just saying that this is my mark on it. And it makes me feel connected to the people in history. It makes me feel connected to the people in the future that will continue to paint these Southwest landscapes. They might change and grow and develop and be something different, but by putting my own mark on it, it makes me feel like I'm part of a bigger collective. And I don't know about you guys, but that can make me feel a lot more grounded in this day and age where we can all kind of feel isolated. And again, that really individualistic push to make something bigger than ourselves can feel really daunting. And by leaning into something that's been done a million times, like, yeah, you do sacrifice a little bit, the idea of being this like innovative painter, but I think it also frees us to lean into things that have value in other ways. So if you're an artist and a painter listening to this, Don't be afraid of cliches. My whole point here is to empower you to not feel like you have to be afraid of certain things and rather to do it with intentionality. It's like I said in the introduction, you don't want to feel like you only have cliches, like you only know to paint something that's been painted a million times, a sunset over water, a Southwest painting, a flower in a vase. But it's more for the painter who feels like they're above that, or that will make them look like a novice painter, or that they're not creative in some way. And instead, I would empower you to say, you don't have to paint a cliche. You can paint whatever you want, but if you do choose to paint something that's been painted a million times, do it with intentionality. Show up and find uniqueness in the way that you apply paint, the way that you choose color, the way that you select your composition, and to not feel bullied or pushed around by what you choose to paint. All this to say, if you want to paint something, don't feel like just because it's been done before, you can't do it. In fact, I find that there's something really freeing about painting something that's been done a million times. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see future videos and be up to date. And if you want to really deep dive on your own painting practice, check out Not Sari Art School, my online art school, where I have added 16 and counting new videos on all things painting, from the foundations, color theory, art history deep dives, as well as how to paint portraits, water, landscape, you name it. So if you want to take your painting to the next level, check that out. We also have a community where you can join and encourage each other. And if you don't know if e-learning is right for you, check out the 7-day painting bootcamp. It's a free best of all of my best tips and tricks of how to paint the fundamentals. This way you can see if e-learning is a right fit for you. Thank you as always, and I'll talk to you guys next week.